Okay, we should have our webinar housekeeping up. Welcome, everybody. Just some quick housekeeping. We've got Q&A turned on for the webinar today. May have chat open as well. So if you need to message something to us, if you're having any issues, feel free to shoot us an email at webinars@nrx.com, and we'll help you hopefully get whatever issue might be causing you a problem worked out. I'm sure after a couple of years of Zooming and Teamsing, you guys have got the logistics for joining a remote meeting figured out. And so let's just get right into it. So today it says a panel today. Really, we're going to hear mostly from Alex about what Branch Energy is bringing today to the ERCOT market. So we're really targeting some new offerings from the supplier community that really get beyond what we think of as traditional supply. And I'm really excited about this personally, to see the innovation going on versus kind of the same old, same old. And also just to see a unique value proposition to the broker community that I think has just not been out there so far. And I find really compelling as someone who's been in and around this community for almost 2 decades. So I'm really excited about what we're going to hear from Alex today. Really quick, you can find both of us. Alex, you plan to be in Austin?
That's the plan.
All right. So you'll see Alex and me and probably a couple other folks from Alex's team, perhaps, at TIPA in Austin coming up, the national conference. This is kind of the next big event. We were just in Vegas for EMC, heard about a lot of great things there. And I'm looking forward to November in Austin. It's a beautiful time to be in Texas in mid-November. And the Zaza is nicely situated to get around Austin, and always some fun to get into in Austin. So I know that most of the people on the call today are our Sparkplug broker customers. And so many of you know what we do for the broker world. You know our solutions for brokers. Some of you may not know that we also have solutions for an increasing number of suppliers. And we help them similarly in the sales process. Kind of the counterpoint to Sparkplug is Propeller, which is kind of inbound opportunities from brokers, getting them priced up, checking credit, creating proposals, generating contracts, stewarding the DocuSign, going through approvals, booking margin, submitting for enrollments. So all those things that you know go on the supplier side of the business, that you see kind of glimpses of as you go back and forth, getting pricing and getting contracts and getting confirms. We're now helping the supplier community accomplish that. And as you may or may not know, we also do the commission side for suppliers. We just passed $1 billion in broker commissions processed across our customer footprint with our product called Craft. So that's what we're doing on the supplier side. And although that might not be exciting, what we know is the connectivity between broker and supplier, the handoff of data. I need to get quotes, I need to get contracts, I need to get information about my commissions from a supplier, and the supplier needing to provide that back to the broker today happens via email and spreadsheet. 99, maybe 100%, probably pretty safe bet, of commercial transactions are transacted via email and spreadsheet and PDF today. And we think there's a better way. And I'm excited to meet people like Alex, who comes from kind of a technology background. And he thinks there's a better way. And we're on the same page about that. So it's nice to kind of feel like there are other people out there trying to invent and move this industry forward in a lot of different ways. And so what we have in the middle of that is something we call Exchange, which is really just about an API hub that does two things. It makes the connectivity so you don't have to build and hire programmers and wire into all these different suppliers, number one. And then number two, it's sort of the Rosetta Stone. So you call it Centerpoint, they call it CPE. You call it Con Ed, they call it Con Ed New York. You call it, AEP, they call it American Electric Power. So translating between kind of the data languages, because we have no standard in this industry, translating the names of zones and rate classes and load profiles and utility names. What does a start date mean? How do we communicate a customer that's going to be UCB, right? All this stuff that we have to communicate during this transaction process, we want to make that as simple as sending a message in the application and not having to go and copy and paste on both sides, the supplier side and the broker side, just eliminating that whole copy and paste tool from the toolbox, replacing it with APIs. And so that's really what we do. Branch is one of our newest Propeller customers. And this is just, I'm going to just click through this really quickly. This is sort of how it works. You've got data on one side or the other, and through Exchange, through having these APIs, even people who don't run Sparkplug are able to plug into this API and communicate with lots of different suppliers by making one connection. And the same thing on the supplier world. We have suppliers that don't run Propeller, but provide these services that want to connect to the broker world and not have to make 2,000 different API connections to every channel partner that they have out there. And so that's really what we're talking about today. As far as what the new experience that we're bringing as part of what we're doing with Branch. And then in addition to this new way to transact, meaning you literally can set up an opportunity with your easy IDs, pick your start dates, etc., and you'll be able to pick Branch, which will be an Exchange connected supplier starting in the next couple of weeks. And when you send them a price request, it's within seconds in Alex's and in his team's pricing system, and they're able to very quickly turn around proposals, very quickly turn around pricing without having to rekey, and very quickly, have a conversation about this customer, what they're looking for, and so forth. And the same thing when he sends you back those pricing in that proposal, you'll be able to quickly see that in your screen without having to key that in, and no one's having to rekey data on either side. So that's what we're going to bring to the conversation. And now let me pull Alex in, because that's not the only thing. Branch is a really special retailer. And I think when I met, some of you may have heard MJ with Branch in Dallas, TIPA, I think earlier this year. I think it was maybe in the spring sometime. Talk about their solution. As you may have had a kind of a sneak preview. And so today we'll get a chance to hear from Alex and kind of with some more specifics on what they're bringing and kind of what the opportunity is for brokers. So with that, Alex, if you want to share your slides.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, Nate, first off, thanks for the invite and the gracious hospitality. It's a pleasure to be here. I also feel like I need to apologize to the audience about it. I was on Morning Plug this morning. So for those who are dual subscribers, you probably have more Alex and Cushman in your day than you need.
We didn't think about the date that we planned this. Well, hey.
Yeah, no, I mean,
hopefully it's a force multiplier.
Yeah, let's hope. Actually, do you mind, Nate, if you stop sharing your screen? That should allow me to pop in.
I got you.
Great, there we go. Yeah, so again, everybody, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll try and keep this short. I've got a couple slides we'll talk you through a little bit about Branch and some of our offerings. But I'm hoping we can use a lot of the time just for Q&A. I think Nate mentioned at the top, but there are chat and QA functions down at Zoom. So feel free to send questions our way. I think the way to think about Branch is we're basically sort of a very data-driven, technology-focused retailer plus a VPP operator. It's sort of under one roof. And I mean, for those who are less familiar with VPP, virtual power plant, it basically means we're going out into the field, deploying energy assets behind the meter at our customer sites, and then managing those systems and sort of managing them remotely to help reduce costs, improve resilience, those sorts of things. And the idea for Branch came out of my time at Just Energy, where I was the chief technology officer. And I was seeing this tremendous shift in complexity behind the meter, right? Like the energy system as it was originally built out, you've got power plants, you got transmission, distribution, you got buildings consuming power, and that's it. But as we're going through this energy transition, buildings are becoming generation assets with solar. They're becoming storage assets with battery. We've got more and more load flowing through internet connected device and all these different flavors of demand response. So it's a massive amount of complexity behind the meter. Now, if you do it well, you can create a lot of value for customers beyond what traditional retailers do, right? Retailers are like, hey, here's your price, here's a terrible looking bill for you to consume once a month. That's sort of what the retailer's bread and butter is now. But if you do this behind the meter stuff, you can really help people save a lot of money, right? You can make them more resilient, you can reduce their carbon footprint. There's all these different great stuff that you can do, but it is much harder, right? And it's not in the wheelhouse of a traditional retailer because you've got to understand physical devices and field services. You got to be able to write the software to do real-time optimization to really make this stuff work. Um, and that's not the traditional skill set of a retailer. So the idea behind Branch was to build sort of a full stack energy from scratch as a technology shop, to take the best of modern technology to build a best-in-class retailer as well as a best-in-class BPP operator. And if you put those things together, it means you can provide sort of novel offers to customer that would be very hard for any one of those two companies independently to do. So to give you a sense of what that looks like, our flagship offering right now, which is for commercial customers in ERCOT, is a combination of a very low cost fixed rate energy contract with a no cost battery for these customers. So like the way this works is we can go to a customer and say, hey, we'll give you a great rate on energy, really low price. In addition, we're going to come and install a top of line battery at your site at no cost. We'll do the install, permitting, all that stuff. We'll operate that battery every minute of every day. We're building all this optimization software to charge when energy is cheap and discharge when it's expensive. And then we can share the value that's being created by that activity in the form of a low rate, right? Which is how we're able to beat these other guys on rate. And then if there's ever an outage, you can use whatever juices in the battery for some backup, right? So it's fundamentally a cost saving offer where there's no CapEx. You just like sign the contract, start saving. And then you also get some resilience sort of thrown in for good measure. So to make this sort of come alive a bit, sometimes I find it just easier to like share a specific example. So let me pull up, so this is a proposal that we put together for a customer last week, and they actually signed it. So this is now a signed deal as of a couple of days ago. So these are, proposals that we can put together very quickly. We've invested in some automation so we can turn these things around in less than a day. So we have some basic information about the offer, but I think like the meat and potatoes is this slide here. Right. And so you can see on the left-hand side, you've got sort of a traditional fixed rate energy contract. So in this case, it's 3-year contract. And this contract looks and feels exactly like every other energy contract you've ever seen. Very straightforward. The right-hand side of the page is a separate contract, which is a site licensing agreement, right? So this is the customer just basically saying, hey, Branch, we give you permission to install a battery on our site and operate it, right? And as you can see here, there's no cost at all for the customer. We're structuring the battery site license agreement as a 10-year contract. I mean, if the customer ever wants us to remove battery, we can do it. But the intent is that we're having this customer for a full decade. And then in addition to getting that great rate, which you can see over here, the customer is going to get paid $20,000 over the term of that contract. So we're basically cutting them a check for $2,000 every year. Right, pretty good. And then again, you get some backup. So if there's an outage, you can use the juice in the battery for backup. Now it's worth mentioning, right? If there's like a 1-week outage, if you like a barrel thing, battery's not going to get you through that, but a couple hour outage should be no problem. So that's sort of the core of the offer. In these proposals, we also sort of put a site overview. So this is a pretty straightforward case. It's a single site proposal. This is a hotel in this particular case. We sized the 250 kilowatt hour system for them. This is proposed site location. And this particular one is about quarter of the size of a parking space, something like that. Quarter to a half, that kind of scale. Putting it down near the meter. It's worth noting that we deal all the time with proposals where the customer has multiple sites and some work with batteries and some might not, but we can handle that complexity no problem. We also provide a little bit of information on the type of battery system that would be appropriate for their site. These battery systems are top of the line. They're great. They're very straightforward. I mean, just kind of a big metal box, kind of looks like a generator, plop down near the meter. And then we also provide them a little bit of context on what the process looks like, right? So we'll get a contract signed, we'll do a site visit to sort of finalize all the design, get everything we need to submit the permits. Again, we take care of all that. In some cases, if if the right location is on grass, sometimes you have to put in a concrete pad or something like that. So if there's any construction, we take care of that. And then finally, we do the install. So that's a little bit about what these proposals look like. The other thing that I wanted to talk through, particularly for this audience, is how we think about commissions, right? And again, you have those sort of two contracts. On the energy side, it works exactly as it does with any other retailer. You guys tell us the mills, we sort of price that in, and then sort of run standard commission process. But because there's also this battery contract, we also provide a commission on that. So for this particular contract, there was a 1.5K signing bonus. And then every year that battery is in operation, there's an additional 2K commission to the broker, right? So you add all that stuff up. So this, this one deal for this broker, could end up around $60,000. So it's hopefully that's an exciting number. We've thought a lot about how to design these products to make them great for customers and also make them work really, really well for brokers. Right. I talk to the team a lot about how brokers are our customers too, and we aspire to be the most broker-friendly retailer in the market. And this is sort of part of that. Acknowledging the fact that this isn't going to be necessarily a totally vanilla sale. You have to educate customers about batteries. It's more complex, and so that should be reflected in the commissioning. In terms of ideal customers, the great thing about these batteries is that they work just about everywhere, right? Unlike solar, which might not work for certain roof types or trees or whatever. As long as there's space near the meter, you can generally get one of these batteries in. We've had success at a whole bunch of different sort of industry types, and so we'll certainly work with you all to help figure out what kind of battery makes the most sense for each site. In terms of path to first sale, it's pretty straightforward. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to meet with you. We'll get a signed partnership agreement. Again, those look pretty standard, not radically different from what you've seen elsewhere. Then you just start sending us price requests. If you got Sparkplug, great. That'll streamline it. But if for some reason you got to send us an email, smoke signals, whatever you want, we will take you. We'll take your pricing request by any mode. And then we'll typically turn these prices around within 24 hours. And so we'll put those, nice proposal together, which you can, forward to your customer if you'd like. I'd also mention too, that if for some reason a particular site isn't a great fit for a battery, we're still happy to sign traditional energy contracts. And so what we'll often do is say like, hey, this isn't a great fit for a battery right now, but here's a great rate. And, if a battery offer comes up in the future, we'll let you know, kind of thing. And then, we sign the contract and get going to commissions. So that's a brief overview of what we're up to at Branch, but happy to answer any questions. If you're interested in learning more, drop us a line at sales@branchenergy.com, and we'll set up a session to get you onboarded.
Fantastic. Well, I had half a dozen questions, which you answered most of them. Some of them I got to ask you in advance. I see we do have one question that came in from the audience. Are the batteries lithium ion? So maybe talk about the nature of the batteries.
Yeah.
And then what states is this available in? And any plans outside of Texas in the Northeast? So
Okay.
a couple of the multi-part questions. So maybe start with
question. I'll answer two. One. So first answer is right now we're offering this in Texas. Second, plans for geographic expansion. Certainly, we plan to sort of serve every market over time. And I think the first question was what kind of battery? They're LFP, so they're a lithium battery. That's by far the most robust technology out there. Huge amount of supply chain on it. The LFP ones are the safest batteries that ever been produced, and we feel really good about them. I will say that we are battery manufacturer agnostic, in the sense that what we're doing is we're constantly scanning the market, looking for the best product out there for every single different building, right? And we think if we, this approach is going to allow us to provide the best options for our customers rather than being tied to like one specific manufacturer.
I had a question about the renewal. So you talked about a 3-year supply contract, but then you talked about the life cycle of that customer as a 10-year life
That's right.
cycle. How does the retail supply contract come along? And I noticed some things in your proposal that gave some clues to that, but maybe you could talk to, what
Yeah.
happens after the first 3 years?
That's a great question, right? And I think this sort of ties into making sure that we're thinking about a product that works well for brokers, right? And one thing to note is signing a 10-year energy contract is just a bad idea, right? They're like super expensive. You customer get underwater, it's really gross, right? So we didn't want to do that. And so we're like, okay, well, we'll sign a fixed rate contract for a more reasonable amount of time. But the reason why the broker relationship is so important is because the only fair way to get a reasonable price is to run an auction, right? Every building has different usage. The pricing is going to be different. It's changing all the time. And so what we wanted to do is like, we don't actually have to we were making our economics are driven primarily by the battery, not by the energy contract, right? So we feel very good about giving our customers a really, really great rate all the time. But the only way that they're going to know it's a great rate is if they've got a third party that they trust, their broker, who's like, I went out and like, we do 3 years and they're like, hey, I went out, I got 5 other quotes and Branch is still the best price. So renew with them again, feel good about it. And there's no other way to do that, right? There's no external third-party benchmark that is going to make sense for each, because every customer is different, right? And so that's why I think the broker relationship is really important. And I would hope certainly, if you think about brokers sort of building a great business, thinking about being like, hey, I can get this customer, I can save them money on day one. I'm giving them something new and interesting, which hopefully their value. And then 2, I'm setting them up to probably be a customer for a decade, right? Because if, they come up for renewal and it's working great and like they got this battery and I'm showing that Branch is still the cheapest option, then that broker's business, is not just about like, hopefully I can keep them for a couple of years. It's like, wow, I could really start thinking about serving this customer for a decade plus. So that's sort of the dynamic around sort of the repricing. We'll be flexible around, if some customer wants a 4-year or 2-year or blend and extend, we can do, we're happy to do whatever. The main thing that we want to do is make sure that the customer is feeling confident that they are getting a great price, which is where the broker comes in.
And then I saw in the agreement that you showed in the proposal, there was like almost I'll be within 3 mils of the best price on the renewal guarantee,
Yeah.
or I don't know if it was called a guarantee, but I saw in the footnote, I was like, that's a compelling way to say, hey, you're going to get
Yeah.
a reasonable rate, within
That's
3 mils
right.
of the best price. I mean, that's
Yeah, you've got
solid.
good eyes. It was like, I think we have to work on that slide, make it a little bit less dense. But yeah, again, this sort of gets back to this point that like, we're not actually necessarily looking to make a ton of margin on the energy contract. And so we feel very comfortable sort of doing a price guarantee kind of mechanic where like, again, we got to rely on a broker to go out, test the market, see what the market rate is, and then say, hey, we'll sort of match, pricing within some band kind of stuff. But yeah, that's the intent there.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. We got another question from the audience here. Does the customer pay for the kilowatt hours used to keep the battery charged?
Ooh,
And that's
great
kind of
question. The
a
short answer
good
is
question.
no. Great
You know,
question. The answer is no.
what's going on behind the scenes here, Alex?
Yeah, well, we thought about this quite a bit, right? So the one thing that we want to be able to say is like, customer, I guarantee you, you're never going to pay for the battery operations, right? So these batteries are going to be charging and discharging, and they're not perfectly efficient, right? So we wanted to make sure that we're never charging the customer for any battery operations. And the way we achieve that is we install a revenue grade meter on the building usage independently, right? So we've got this independent measure of only the energy that's being consumed by the building, and that's what's being used for billing, right? So basically, you've got your utility meter, and that's going to be the sum of the building plus the battery. We're measuring the meter for the building, and that's what we're running our bill off. And then the utility or whatever is, ERCOT's gonna be like, hey, Branch, this is your total building usage, and then we'll cover whatever the total is. So that's the way we sort of manage around that. But it's a super important point, and something that you want to drive home. It's like, hey, the battery usage is totally separate from what you build.
Right, right. Well, that's cool. Um, Man, pretty clear answer. That's double meters. That makes a ton of sense, and also gives you a definite, it's not like, well, we make an estimate or it's a heuristic or statistical kind of indicator, but it's like literally metered off. So you just get the customer's load separate from the battery. I had another kind of question just coming from a commissions perspective. I noticed that there was some like a signing bonus of some sort of upfront style commissions. How do you guys think about that? Is that against the KWH? Is that part of the battery kind of, is there commissions? You think of it as one relationship? How do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean,
Commissions?
we do have two separate contracts, and so in the sense, I mean, we think of it as one product, but like as a contractual matter, there's the energy contract, which has the standard mills, and then there's the battery contract, which has that signing bonus plus ongoing sort of battery operation.
Okay. So the upfront is kind of the placing of the battery
Yeah,
side of
I
the
think the
commission.
other thing which maybe I didn't allude to, but is a useful distinction, is that the timing of the energy contract and the battery can be decoupled, right? So, for example, I mean, in this particular case, this was a little bit more of a rush job, right? The customer was like wanted to start in a couple of weeks, and so we're starting the energy contract in a couple of weeks. We got to source the battery. It might take a couple months, 2, 3 months or something like that. So the battery is going to be installed after the energy contract flows, but that's no problem, right? So we'll like give them that great rate on day one. So that's one thing to note, is that you don't have to
Yeah.
like, you don't have to sort of manage the complexity. It's like, hey, we'll get these two contracts, they'll be coupled together, but we can have a different energy start date from battery install date. Yeah,
And
so
how does the logistics of the install, permitting, et cetera, what does the timeline of that look like? Is it, you said maybe a couple months, but does it vary site to site significantly? Does it vary on the size or complexity of
not so
the
much on the
customer's business
size. It's
plan?
the biggest variability is actually the basically the county. Like, just different counties have like pretty different permitting processes. And so, some are pretty fast, some are slower. What I will say though is, like, one nice thing about
Government
signing,
red tape.
yeah, you're be shocked to discover, right? But no, I think one of the nice things about signing contracts with a forward start date is it helps us manage that, right? So if for example, we're signing a contract that's like starts in March or something, that's great, right? We can lock in that price, we can like do the site visit, we can kick off all the permitting, and we can get that battery in around the same time as the energy starts flowing, right? Whereas if you're signing for tomorrow, obviously it's going to take some amount of time to get the battery squared away from like a supply chain and permitting perspective.
Cool. We have another question from the audience here, asking about, I think what I'm reading here is, so it just says briefly discuss the financial side of your business. As we know, these batteries are expensive. So I think what I'm reading between the lines there is, how do we know you're going to stick around, right? You're going to carry these batteries on your balance sheet,
That's right.
right? You're financing them, and Branch is the owner and is getting effectively a site lease from the customer to locate this battery or co-locate the battery at their facility. So, you want to talk anything you're willing to share about
Yeah,
kind of your,
yeah, for sure. So that's exactly right. So these batteries are sitting on our balance sheet. And I mean, the way it works is we monetize the heck out of them, right? So the way we've set it up, we built a bunch of software to optimize across, straight energy arbs, so like the commodity arb, the ancillary markets, the day ahead. We've even found a way to sort of monetize the carbon benefit of this, right? So you're generally charging when the grid is very clean, and then discharging when it's sort of dirtier. So we put a lot of thought into how to squeeze every dollar per kilowatt hour per year out of the battery. And then we've lined up a bunch of very low cost financing, so it's not so expensive for us to get them deployed. The other thing that's kind of nice about this approach is, as you start going up in scale, the cost of these batteries tends to come down, right? And then also, as you start doing these at scale, these projects are very similar. You can get very efficient at doing the install, right? So people talk a lot about the like price per kilowatt hour of the battery, but if you look at the total cost to get these things installed, the install cost can be a material fraction. And so the way we're making these unit economics work is a combination of being like super thoughtful and rigorous about how we're sourcing these batteries and doing the install and keeping those costs very low, as well as being similarly thoughtful and rigorous about how to monetize those batteries. So that's how we sort of think about the unit economics, just in terms of like financials, what have you. We are not sort of dilettantes at this. So the team's like really strong retailer backgrounds. We're not like one of those random retailers who are like, yay, like we got a sales channel. Like that's not who we are. We've got a great supply agreement with Engie. That's rock solid. We've raised more than $20 million from top flight VCs. So, I think like, I'd say we take very seriously the unit economics. Like this is not a charity. I'm like highly motivated to make this be a great business. But what I'd say though is that the way I think about, and the way Branch more generally thinks about building a great business, is you want to do that by consistently creating value for the people in the ecosystem, right? That means like delivering a product that is good for the customer, rather than like, a lot of retailers out there kind of like, not to be disparaging, but I mean, it's kind of a scam, right? They're just sort of like hidden fees, all this crazy
We all
stuff.
know that's a
Yeah,
part of the market. Just
yeah,
like
it is, right?
any competitive market, you're going to have
It
the
is,
used
right?
car salesman that's terrible and the used car salesman that's really selling great cars,
Yeah. And so our sort of core thing here is let's design and build products where the customer actually benefits. Let's be in it for the long haul. Let's have them be customer for decades. And let's work with partners like brokers on the channel side to make sure that they've got a healthy, sustainable business. Right. And that's how you build something that is enduring and can scale well. So I think it's a totally valid question. But hopefully that gives folks a little bit of context and comfort with it.
Yeah. I mean, I know that it's not pet insurance, but it'll do. If you're going to bundle something with the retail supply agreement,
Yeah.
I guess the battery might be as useful as pet insurance. I don't know. Time will tell. Time will tell. Well, I mean, I think it's just really been great. We got some great questions from the audience. My thought is to wrap up and get the copy of this webinar out to the rest of our customers, and then maybe even share it with the marketplace just to kind of understand what you guys are doing. Any final thoughts, Alex, that you might want to share?
Certainly, well, as I say, we've been piloting this now. I've got a lot of great feedback from our brokers and customers, and we're now sort of in the phase where we're like expanding it. So if there's folks who are interested in learning more, I just encourage you to reach out at sales@branchenergy.com. We're happy to chat. We're always looking for feedback too. I think I think we've got something great, but we're looking for feedback and how to iterate and make it better. So reach out, let's have some conversations. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So for me, one, you'll see an announcement if you're a Sparkplug customer about how to connect with Branch in Sparkplug. So that's number one. Two, in the meantime, what you want to do is get a broker agreement, right? A partner agreement, Alex mentioned earlier, with
Well, that's
Branch.
probably the first thing, but
Yeah. In the meantime, let's set up that relationship so that we can turn them on for you guys inside of Sparkplug, and who your pricing contacts are and everything, right? Understand, any confidential questions you might have. Maybe you want to just like do a for instance with one of your customers, just kind of walk through what it would look like. I think it's a great idea, as Alex did here with us today. And then the last thing is to remember that there's a commission bonus out there. I see a note from one of our other hosts here, not to forget to talk about that for, I think that's a note to Alex. So I'm just reminding Alex, and I'm saying it as well, so that we don't forget to mention that on the webinar as well today, which is something, again, also unique in the space. It's not just some KWH up front or something. It's actually a secondary commission for selling this kind of combo product offering.
yeah, well, I mean, I know we just said we're going to leave, but like parting thought, I think it is a novel offer now, but I'd say like even, if I get hit by a bus or Branch didn't exist, I think these sorts of offerings are going to become much more common
Absolutely.
in the future, right? Um, it's going to be much more common like 5 years from now to be signing deals that have some kind of device component to it. And I'd certainly encourage everybody to this might be an easy way to sort of start getting familiar with some of these sort of combined type agreements where you've got the energy contract and the device component.
And I'll say my wrap up is just, I think this is what the future of brokerage to me looks like. It's not just selling retail supply or a rate or some numbers in a grid and picking the lowest one and going on with your life, but it's really being able to address a bigger need of customers, and that means you've got to have some more tools in the toolbox. A lot of brokers also that maybe shied away from solar, not everybody, but some have, because they're saying, hey, it's going to cut into my commission, right? That's fewer kWh. I get paid in kWh. And you don't have that issue with batteries, right? You don't have that issue with batteries. So I think you have the opportunity to bring something new. It's something to talk about with customers, even going back into some customers. Maybe you've even already signed on a rate and looking for, do the economics make sense here? And do I also get to get these other benefits, whether it's resiliency or the rev share, right? There's all kinds of upside outside of the traditional supply agreement here. So, I mean, every broker wants something new to talk to their customers about versus same old, same old. And I'm really excited, as I said at the beginning, that Branch is bringing one of those innovations we can thank our competitive market for. So with that, we'll wrap up. Thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.